everybody, welcome back to the shop. I got a real quick one for you tonight. This right here was a Christmas present for my oldest son, Bo, when he was 2 years old. This was produced by Wheel Horse. This one's a 1967. It's a Lawn Ranger 157, and they made these small tractors for several years, although I believe they made the 157 only 1 year. And it's actually a full-size riding lawnmower. For an adult, it was just really, really small. I found this little tiny tractor on Craigslist the week before Christmas, and it was completely destroyed. Somebody hacked on this thing pretty hard before I got a hold of it. As you can see here, they've chopped out a piece of the hood. Originally, it had a built-in gas tank up top. They modified this hole a little bit to try to get another engine to fit. There was no engine in it when I got it. It had been sitting out in the weather, and I got it back here to the shop. Got it all torn down, blasted, cleaned up, and found out the transmission was full of water. So, being the ever persistent and hard-headed father that I am, I took every single needle bearing that was in the transmission and cleaned every single one with emery cloth to put all the needle bearings and gears back together. Got the transmission to actually work pretty good, and to get it ready for him in time for Christmas. Now, since then, we have taken the transmission apart. We've replaced all the needle bearings, all the ball bearings in it. It's completely back to as it came from the factory. The engine was one that somebody had given me out of a pressure washer that blew up. It's a little Honda 5 horsepower fixed throttle engine. It was free. I didn't have to pay any money for it. And actually, the fixed throttle works out perfect because I don't ever have to worry about them monkeying with a lever and trying to speed it up. What I did originally was take this handle, which was the blade engagement handle. I welded a couple of bolts onto the clutch pedal and bolted this handle on there so that I could walk alongside him and push the clutch in by hand without having to bend over to do it. Because you can imagine at 2 years old, he didn't know what a clutch was anyway. I also added a jet ski kill switch, and it's just basically a dead man switch. It ties to him. If he comes off the machine, it immediately kills the engine. I did make a little bumper to protect the grill up here up front. Thank goodness I did, because he has bumped it into a few trees over the years. Also made an exhaust for it to look like a real tractor. This is just a piece of 1/2-inch conduit and a piece of 1-inch conduit. I drilled a bunch of holes in it to look like ventilated ribs. It actually does tie into the muffler. It is a functioning exhaust, and the heat guard that's on it does work. Here's what I got to try to accomplish. My oldest son can just barely touch this clutch pedal. He can't fully depress it all the way. My middle son, Luke, is just a little bit of a smaller frame kid. And he's having trouble being able to reach the clutch pedal. And I can't walk with him every time he wants to ride this. So my idea was this. I want to put a hand-operated clutch right here, probably attach the pivot point somewhere in here, that when they pull back, it pushes a linkage rod to a bell crank, which pushes this rod forward and essentially pushes the clutch in for him. So it's just a hand clutch. He knows how to shift gears. He knows how to let the clutch out. He just can't reach the clutch. So it's a pretty simple project. I'm going to blow through this really fast, but I thought it was kind of interesting because of the vintage of the machine. And anything with the kids, you know, it always gives you a thrill to watch the kids ride around and have a good time with it. So I'm going to jump on this. Stick with me. We're going to move through this sucker really fast. This is just a piece of 1/2-inch EMT conduit. It's a partial stick I had left over here. There's a lot of tricks to bending EMT conduit, but it's super easy to do. You can get an inexpensive EMT conduit bender at your homeless despot. My buddy Stan Zinkowski's putting out a whole series on how to use one of these. His channel is Shaden HKW or Barzy Industrial. It's been really interesting to watch him do it. He's really, really good at bending conduit and shows you some pretty neat tricks. So be sure to check him out. What I'm going to do is just kind of bend this real quick and try to get a shape. You can see what I'm doing here is just a lot of kind of by guess and by gosh method. There's no exact science to it. Just trying to figure it out so it'll give them a comfortable reach and clear the steering wheel. You know what? I don't like that. I'm going to saw it off and start over. Just going to mount up about like that. But I need to put something through here that'll allow this to be drawn down and act as a pivot. It's just a piece of 3/8 joiner material, but a 5/16 bolt fits through it, and it's got a nice thread. Now, truth be told, I could go over here to the lathe and turn out a bushing that I can weld in there. You know, that's all well and good, but this is fast and it's free. And you know, they're gonna outgrow this tractor in a couple of years, and it'll sit down in the barn probably until they have kids. It's not gonna see a lot of hours of use, so I feel very comfortable doing that. So what I think I'm gonna do is figure out where my pivot is, and I'm gonna drill a hole right through this piece of conduit. I'm gonna sink this sucker in there and just TIG weld it right inside the pipe. And these are pretty interesting. These are Heim joint links. They're aluminum, they're hardened aluminum. And these came out of a Boeing 747. I actually cut one in half for a TV show one time, and there was a whole bunch of them left over when we took the airplane apart. And they were gonna throw them in the trash, and I said, nah, I'll make something out of those one day. So someday came, right? So they're all different links. And those are gonna go, depending on what length I need to get my bell crank to work. I'm gonna bore a 5/16 hole right here. We're just gonna put a 5/16 bolt with a couple washers and of course a nylock nut. And this is nothing more than just a little piece of a 3/16 steel with a 1/4 inch hole. And I'm gonna weld that right in this area somewhere. It'll give me plenty of throw. So before I do that, I need to get all of the paint off of here so that I get a good weld and I don't contaminate my weld with all the paint that burns up. This isn't stick welding, it's not just gonna burn it off. So with MIG and with TIG, you like to have a really clean surface. It aids in the fusion of the materials together. You don't have the carbon residue of the paint or whatever is on the surface left behind to mix in with your molten puddle. So I'm just gonna take my grinder here. This is just my Metabo 4.5 inch grinder. I've got a flap disc on it. I think it's a 60 grit. All I'm looking to do is knock the paint off here. So we're just gonna knock it off real quick. All right, so we've got a nice clean area to put us a little weld right here. And then the next thing we need to do is to bore a hole right here to put this lever in. I wanted to use these holes originally. They were there from the factory, and I thought about building a plate, putting a plate there with a hole in the middle to put this handle on. And let me tell you why I'm not gonna do that. When I move this down, I make this lever a lot shorter. When I make that lever a lot shorter, this handle needs a whole lot more throw to move the pedal where it needs to go to disengage the clutch. I want them to be able to ease that clutch out rather than having a very short throw movement where the clutch will grab much quicker. So I'm gonna put a hole right in this area here, and that'll pretty closely line me up with my lever. All right, I've just got a 5/16 drill bit. What we're doing there is just deburring the hole. A little countersink does nicely. We're gonna obviously add some washers here once we get everything put together, but this just gives us kind of a rough fit up and to get an idea about how we want this to go together. The next thing we gotta do is we're gonna have to weld this part on right there. For that, I'm gonna use the 210 MP, real down and dirty, a nice little MIG weld right along the edge here. One and done, I hope. Try to affix the ground clamp nice and close so we don't try to get electrical connections through joints. Electrical connections through joints usually lead to bad things, including bad welds. Now while we have that tack weld there, put our handle here to see what this looks like. Looks like that's gonna make a happy camper right there. Good positioning. Let's come in down there and seal the deal. All right, a little wire brush action to get any of the crusties, the paint that wanted to come off. And now everyone can see, just depending on where, when I put this linkage on here, where I set the length of this linkage to, is where that handle will rest. And as they pull it, it'll push the pedal down. So the next thing for me to do here is to disassemble all of this, just deburr everything, take it out there and throw some red paint on it. paint this red to match. We're essentially done. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw here today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and like us on Facebook. Please, somewhere down below here is a link. See you soon.